Welcome to the first episode of Discuss with Gus. I'd like to read some of the letters, emails that we've gotten this week with regard to legislation and give you some answers. So thank you for tuning in. The first one is from Gary from Lutz, and he has a question. The cost of pharmaceuticals in this country is skyrocketing due to legalized monopolies on certain drugs. Do you propose allowing citizens to cross state lines to purchase health insurance? And again, the answer is yes. And the Energy and Commerce Committee is marking up a bill, which I expect to be on the floor very soon. We'll pass it off the floor and hopefully get it through the Senate to allow people more choices. And this particular bill will allow people to cross state lines in order to purchase health insurance. And we want to make sure that that plan, if you choose, will include pharmaceuticals as well. I have a particular bill that will more than likely get on the floor of the House of Representatives in the next couple of weeks to incentivize the pharmaceutical companies to create more competition, thereby lowering the costs and getting rid of these awful monopolies, such as the EpiPen situation, the HIV drug. There's only one person or one company offering the product, and they jack up the prices, which I think is reprehensible. And we want to create more competition. And this particular bill deals with generic drugs. So this will lower prices, and we're doing this in a bipartisan fashion. The next constituent is Mark from Dunedin. And Mark says, I would like to know if the new health care bill will have any effect on Medicare. Will I pay more or less included in my benefits? And the answer is this health care bill, the American Health Care Act, will not have any effect on Medicare. As a matter of fact, I'm sponsoring a resolution to make sure that we continue to close the donut hole under Medicare Part D. And that makes it, we want to close this hole. Most people know that after a certain amount, there's a donut hole, and people pay up to a certain amount. They pay their pharmaceutical drugs, and then there's catastrophic insurance after that. So roughly between $3,000 and $7,000 on the costs, then people are required to pay more. We want to close that donut hole and by 2020. And that's what the Affordable Care Act says. By 2020, we'll phase out that donut hole so that prescription drug costs are less for seniors. So, and no effect on Medicare, so Medicare recipients should be safe, and things will be good for them. Next, we have Rita from Newport Richey. And Rita says, I'm tired of the bickering and deadlock with party ideology and long for the days when compromise was the hallmark of legislation. I respectfully ask you, search your heart and consider what is good for the country, our beloved United States of America. And Rita, I agree, and I am working in a bipartisan fashion to solve these problems. Republicans have good ideas, particularly with health care. Democrats have good ideas, particularly with health care, and we need to work together. As a matter of fact, the reason Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was so, in my opinion, in most cases, was a disaster and unsustainable, is because it was basically one party that wrote the bill. And we're taking our time and doing the right thing, going through the process, and Democrats have input in the process, and we'll get a good bill out. I will tell you this, again, we have to think of our constituents first, and think of our great country first. I do have that piece of legislation that's moving swiftly through the House with regard to prescription drugs, lowering the cost of prescription drugs by incentivizing the companies to bring the drug to market as soon as possible, creating more competition. And that's a bipartisan bill with Kurt Schrader from Oregon. So I do work in a bipartisan fashion. It takes both parties to work together and get things done. But again, these are three constituent questions, and we'll do this again next week. Sorry we don't have a lot of time to answer more questions, but again, I look forward to hearing from you. Please send your emails, send your letters, your phone calls, and we'll try to get your questions answered as soon as possible. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll do this. I'll see you again next week.